Let's start with your parents, their names and where they lived in Italy.
Well, their names were Emilio Sarasoli, and my mother's name was Mary Ann Sarasoli. And they lived in a town in central Italy called Capistrano, like Capistrano from California. And so when my dad married my mother there, and when they had two boys first, and when the second boy was 11 months old, my dad brought my mother and family back to Iron Mountain, Michigan, where he was a minor, and consequently I was born a year later, and this was in
1914.
Yeah. I was born 2 years after my younger brother. And when I was, of course my mother was ailing with hypertension. And there was no remedy for that in those days. So the doctor recommended she go back to her native land where the climate would agree with her. Well, by that time I was not quite 6, and my sister was born 3 years later. So we left Iron Mountain to go back to Italy. But my dad didn't go with us. My older brother was in charge of the 4 of us. And so we made the voyage. My mother was ill all the way through the voyage when we got there. And while we were in Italy, of course, her health didn't improve. And eventually, a month before my 10th birthday, she died of a cerebral hemorrhage. And so we had to wait till my dad, because he was here at the time, so was my older brother. Before they got the news of my mother's death, of course she was already buried because they had no involvement. She was buried the year after she died, the day after. And of course while she was getting me ready for school, which I didn't like, she would tell me that my dad, as she was going to die, I was quite, maybe 8, 9 years old, and my dad would eventually remarry, and I would have a stepmother, which I dreaded, and never came to pass, and poor dad. So from then on, of course, we boarded, because my dad, all those wineries, they had no home, so they all boarded out with other families. So he married my dad and my brother married the year after we came back here, because my dad finally brought us back here. And my brother married the gal he married to the year after, and we moved in with him and his wife 2 weeks later. Imagine what a martyr she was. Anyway, because they planned on waiting for me to be of age that I could do the cooking and the managing, moving out into our own place, and us, me doing the homework and whatever. Of course, that never came to pass because in the meantime the mines closed. It must have been after the great crash. And my dad, of course, wasn't working. He got a little pension. So, my brother, of course, he was an uncle, was in the beer business. This was during the, what was that era that...
In the 30s,
Prohibition?
Yeah,
Prohibition. Oh,
I don't remember. There was a Volstead Act that was passed, and you couldn't sell or make
yeah,
whatever. But
Prohibition.
every family was allowed to make wine for their own use because there was their custom to drink wine, you know. So every family had grape vineyards, and but my uncle, this uncle, only made beer. There were other families that were selling wine. They were making and selling. There was no other way of earning a living, you know. This was depression. My brother, of course, made the grease. He made the beer
Okay.
upstairs of this building, and my other brother and me, we would fill the bottles, and cap them, and that was her job. We were really in money, you know, because other kids our age didn't have any real money. Oh, and of course I went to school there.
Oh.
You know, when we got back here, this is retrospecting. We entered the school system. They all put us in the second grade, and we went to the fifth grade, because that's as far as they could go in the elementary. And, but here, we went to school in this Iron Mountain schools. There were two buildings, Chapin and Farragut. We started in the Chapin school, eventually got into the care, because I remember our report cards. They were all good reports except language. That was the red mark because, well, it took a while to get to learn the language. We didn't know any other but the Italian language. That's all my dad and my mother spoke. So, but my brother quit after a while, and I went as far as 11th grade. And by that time, my dad was aiding, and being the older sister, I had to help with the household and looking after him. And then, of course, in the meantime, I had good times going to dances. Those were the big band era where there wasn't much fun to do because women didn't go golfing or doing anything like that.
or to the bars.
So, and there were no bars because
That's right, it was
you were not allowed
prohibition.
to go. And by the time the vote said they revoked the law, and so people started. But in the meantime, I met my husband while going to those dances. There was an Eagles ballroom on the north side of our mountain where the Victoria Pines is now,
On Victorian Pines?
in those grounds. And there was Eagles ballroom with my husband there. Of course, a couple years later, we married, and henceforth, my daughters were born. But in the meantime, when he got out of the service, while he was in the service, I lived with his mother and dad. And so that the idea was that when I heard from him, his mother and dad would get to send messages, you know. But so after he got out of the service, we went housekeeping. My daughter Diane was already, she was the firstborn, and then from there we moved here, and so I've been in Niagara for 73 years.
Wow.
Hence making me the oldest, one of the, now I'm the oldest citizen with Daryl, is he in a nursing home?
Yes, he's in.
So I'm the only one mobile my age.
You're right. You're right. Okay.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about those dances.
Well, I was pretty popular.
Okay.
Well, I
Well,
don't
you were
know,
just a little bitty thing.
I think I loved to dance. I always did. And I never played any instrument, but they say you express yourself to music on the floor, dance floor. And of course, all the fellows, when young fellows are just learning to dance, they like to dance with someone that knows how, because they know how to follow, and it improves their performance. And that's how it was.
Okay. Tell us your husband's name.
Oh, Albert.
Albert Milbow. And his parents were?
His parents were Mary and Henry Milbow. The one says Reuben Milbow.
Yes.
That's my brother-in-law.
Yes.
Was my sister-in-law there?
Was there today.
We were dancing.
Yeah. She was dancing there too.
So she says.
Oh. Okay. Tell us a little bit more about what did they call your husband?
Oh, Zabi.
Zabi Milbow.
The reason they did that is because they had a little girl neighbor that couldn't say Albert, so that's how it came up with Zabi.
Oh.
Of course, I never called him that, but
No, but that's what he was known as in town. Yeah.
he was very popular in school because he was tall, and in fact, the basketball team, his basketball team, was the first one to go to Madison.
Oh.
They have his trophies in the school.
Trophy case. Then when did he start in the mill?
Well, he started before when I met him, he was already working in the mill. And of course, when he came back here, he was reinstated, and he worked there till he died.
And how old was he when he died?
45.
Of a heart attack? Heart attack? Okay.
So and I was 47.
Oh, so you're older than he was.
So I was older, and here I lived all this time.
Yes. And what did you do after Zabi died?
Well, at first, of course, I didn't know how to drive because we only had one car. And after he died, I learned to drive, and I had to find a job, of course. At that time, the school were just employing teachers' aides because the enrollment was increasing every year, and so they felt the need of a teacher's aide. In fact, this class I helped with the second year was the largest they ever had. When they were all there were 4 tables, they were all full. And that's when they started a 3rd class for each grade. And you were one of the part-timers. And
Do you remember the name of the teacher? Was it Casanova?
no, she was the second one.
Oh, okay.
She was my favorite.
Okay. Yes.
Anyway, no, the first one was, I can't remember their name.
I didn't know her.
No,
No. But our son Todd was in that 2nd class.
in fact, she couldn't read most of those names that were, so when the class started, and she had me read off the names so they could say hero, absent, because so many names were Zukowski and, difficult for her to pronounce, so Mrs. Milbow had to do that.
So, how long did you stay as an aide?
Oh, till I was aide for 16 years. But they put me wherever I needed, So I waited till I was 65 before I quit. And then, of course, I had to stop. By that time, I had income, Social Security. And I supplemented my meager income doing alterations because I'm very good at it. Very good at it. I'll have to admit it.
You still are?
So I did that, and while I was going back, when I was old enough to go out to work, I worked in the shops in our mountain, dress shops. My wedding gown came from the dress shop I worked in. I think I paid $20 for it. And I worked they had a hat shop, a dress shop. I worked for Purina's, and I used to do some alterations for her also. And so I got acquainted with the Haywards, and I did some work for them. And that's all I did. Romance-wise, I had nothing to talk about.
You did have a friend for a while.
I did, and I outlived him.
Oh, okay. I just had forgotten about that. Too.
Yes, well, that was Mrs. Hayward's brother.
Oh, okay.
I had met him before my husband, actually, but he took off for the service, and eventually, before he came back, he married a Berlin showgirl. Show her like a van on stage. That's what she did in Berlin. And of course, she thought he was going to get her into Hollywood, and that was her intentions. He didn't see it, I don't think. But she finally died, and then he got together with me. And of course, he was very serious, even though he idolized his wife. Being a showgirl, I suppose that was impressive, And, but he wanted to get married right not long after. I said, I haven't heard that three-letter word yet. Anyway, that didn't come to pass. He died of a heart attack also. I guess that was too much for him. I shouldn't say that because I don't want it published. But anyway, he died, and I never met anyone after that.
Well, you raised your daughters alone.
Oh, sure. And when Diane graduated, she was good in business, so she was encouraged to go to further her business. Mr. Nora told her she should go to a business school. So she went to Ypsilanti to the Cary College, and she got improved on her. And then she got work there. She worked in the family service, until she practically raised the place. Ran the place. She finally found jobs in different places. Ended up at Domino's headquarters. She was Tom Lanahan's right hand. Yeah. In fact, I went there when he was owner of Tigers team.
Mm-hmm.
They had given him, I went to the office with her one day, they had given him a big chair, easy chair, in the form of a mitt. Anyway, she did very well, and according to I can't think of the word, in order to get a job you need
Recommendation?
yes, very glowing ones for it. So she did very well wherever she went. And of course Mary Ann went to Northern for a year. She didn't like it. She went to Lansing, and she met her husband there, and she had Tyler. And not very long, she divorced, they got a divorce, and she came home. So grandmother took care of Tyler while she looked for a job, and she worked for Gunboat Trucking first. And then he was not very good boss. So she quit there. She learned a lesson. Unless you have a replacement, you better not lose your job, you know. So, but anyway, she finally got a job at Bob's. She didn't even have to apply for it. So she was head of sales there. And until that closed. And then when that happened, Tyler had gone to Florida to do he was in a mail order house that he did while he was in college. He went to Michigan State. In fact, his other grandmother was a teacher and professor in Michigan State. Too bad she didn't live long enough to see how well he did. But he graduated with honors from Michigan State. And anyway, he got married, and after he was graduated, then the company he was working for sent him to Florida, to Deerfield Beach, which is next door to Boca Raton. And so when they started having a family, she went down there because she had nothing to do, had better to do as his nanny, until they had the second one, and then after that, when they put her in nursery school, by that time she had met her friends from Iron Mountain and Niagara in Sarasota. And so she found there was a place next door. She used to go there on weekends that was for sale, and knowing, having worked with mobile homes, she knew it was a good buy, so she bought it. That's where she's in now. And of course, Diane retired from Domino's, and she decided she was not spending another winter in lower Michigan or Michigan, and that's where it is now. So now, because I quit driving, I have a way I used to go. So I went to Florida with Diane, and she always took me back home. But then I didn't have much help. When I quit driving, I had to have someone to drive me around, because you go to doctors in Iron Mountain, or dentists, whatever. So when Marianne, of course, she spent one summer in Florida. She decided she was not spending another summer. It was so hot. So she came home, and so she came with me. So she's with me now, and will be forever. I mean, she will be, you know.
So Diane and Marianne live close to each other, don't they?
Oh yes, we all live in this mobile home village.
Oh, okay.
There's 800 people there.
Oh my.
They have a clubhouse, beautiful pool. So Diane just bought a newer, larger place, because the first year we were there for the winter was a small place, and she looked for a larger one. And now she has a better, larger one, which was a good thing, because when they were planning my 100th celebration, she had to accommodate more people. We had over 50 people there.
So do you still live with Diane in the winter?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And they just come up here with Marianne.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that 100th anniversary party.
Well, I mean, we didn't charge or anything for it, you know. Everybody, Tyler's wife did some cooking, and they had me making meatballs. I made about 3 batches. Marianne said, you better put some in sauce, because everybody will want to have something Italian. So it was, and of course the drinks were plentiful and free for all, you know. And we had one of my nieces from West Palm, Florida, has a husband that plays piano beautifully. So he provided the music. And of course everybody was singing and dancing, and I started dancing. I couldn't resist. And I couldn't stop dancing. We were singing, I could have danced all night. They couldn't. And all the guests said, are you sure you're 100? Because they couldn't believe it. It was a great time.
It was. And you had all your family there.
Yes, they were all there.
All
Tyler came down with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they were there.
But then weren't there some other nieces or nephews or somebody that was there?
Well, I had a grandnephew from Chicago. I had a sister, my nephew's wife, from Venice, which was not too far from me, and her son and wife. So about 10 relatives plus all of my friends there, because my friends there are my daughter's friends, because there are not many older people, you know. Well, they're all old
Yeah,
there,
but not
but
100.
no one. I miss communicating with people of my own age, or even from here. That I think of things I wish I would tell or talk about with somebody that lived this time the same as I did. I can't find anyone so that's what you miss when you get too old.
Also, I'd like to know what you still do around the house here.
Well, I still bake and I still cook and I still do a little sewing because I have macular, and so I have good vision on this eye, and of course I've lost some of my hearing, and these are hazards of old age, you know.
How many loaves of bread do you bake a week?
Well, it depends. I make mostly bread rolls out of the recipe I have. Everybody loves those bread rolls. And I don't make much in bread, but that's the bread, you know, I usually make.
Don't people ask for those bread rolls that you make?
Oh, they always ask for those bread rolls. They just love them. And when we get together with friends down there, you know, for every occasion, especially anything involving the Packers, everyone brings something. And of course they ask me to bring sometimes rolls, but the latest things that I asked me to make is the deviled eggs. So I make a lot of those. But I still do all that.
And
I'm
you
amazed.
still do the cooking.
I remember sewing something for Mary Ann. I bring my sewing machine with me to Florida. I said to her, can you imagine me still sewing like this at my age?
Oh,
Anyway,
and you still have your sense of humor.
well, you have to, you know. If you lose that,
There's a question people always ask, what do you attribute your arriving at 100?
well, the first thing I tell them is I never smoked. And my motto is eat what your body needs. Then you eat what your stomach wants. That's how you eat your entree and your dessert when your stomach wants, if you have room for it. Those 3 R's, I certainly have practiced those all my life. If you've gone through the depression, which was bad. It wasn't so bad when you look back on it, because everybody felt it, you know. But, well, it's a good thing I knew how to sew, because I got it from my mother. I made over so many things that I was able to look as good as anybody with money. I have to say that because it's true.
You've always been elegant.
Well, I don't know why. I certainly wasn't affluent. It's just that I knew what to wear, when to wear it, you know, those kind of things.
I remember you told me that after your husband died, you decided that you were going to eat what was good for you.
Oh yes, I always did. I never overindulged. Even alcohol, I knew because I was drinking wine in Italy when I was in my young middle age.
Yeah. As a child.
Child, because water was dangerous to drink.
Mm-hmm.
But I drank wine.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not.
I think that's common.
It is for Europeans, yes.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Father Mike said once on one of his homilies that children were drinking wine because he says the water was rotten.
Who do you take after more, your mother or your dad?
Mostly my dad, I think. I have his gestures. I didn't have, my mother wasn't with me long enough to really, didn't know much. She didn't live long enough to teach us much, other than what we learned in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a foreigner twice. I was a foreigner when I got there, and a foreigner coming back, learning English all over. Actually learning the language took me a long time to get over that Italian accent, foreign accent, which I was not proud of. But later, as I read, because I'm an avid reader, that you should never be ashamed of
Your heritage.
your heritage. Unless you're a committed felon.
And I don't think you ever did that.
No, I always believed in following rules, because if you don't,
But that's what parents taught in those days, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
To follow the rules. I remember that too. Well, you've had a remarkable life.
Well, I don't consider it, but, compared to some, it wasn't unusual. When we got to, going back to Ellis Island, these are immigrant ships that take you as far as Ellis Island. You're not allowed to get to American soil unless you are screened for
Communicable diseases.
yes. You have. They said they haul you back to Europe if you do have something contagious.
So you remember, you were old enough to remember when you came to Ellis Island.
Oh yeah, well I was 11 years old then.
Okay.
See, we came back at age 11 when I was 11. So I remember that vaguely, of course. And but when anything I read it mentions, there's a novel that was written slowly about Ellis Island. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that they combed our hair with a fine tooth comb because children tend to have lice. Oh, they breed in hot weather,
Yes, they breed in hot weather and probably on the ships because they're so close together.
Sure.
Yeah. So you made both the trip over to Italy and the trip back by ship, I presume. Yeah.
That was the only way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So you were born in 1915, January
9th.
9th, 1915. That's wonderful.
When I go and have my prescriptions, I have to tell them how old I am. Say 9/15. I know it by heart now.
Oh, Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dora.
Well, I really didn't want to do this, you know.
But you did a great job.
When
so-
I talk to my daughters about this, I always burst out crying.
Oh yeah.
And then Diane thinks I'm a negative person. I said, you are what your life has been. That's what makes you who you are. It's the kind of life you've had. You know?
That's right.
That's all I could say about it.